When we play Assassin's Creed games, many times it doesn't just feel like a video game that we just play and forget. More often than not, the experience becomes a part of our lives. Story, the characters, music, the setting, and most importantly, the protagonist. The character we play as is one of the most vital components of making the game memorable because we're quite literally experiencing the primary character's journey in the game. So it's really disappointing and frustrating when these characters that we invest so much time, attention, and interest in just fades away into ambiguity and doesn't have proper send-offs or endings. And as the days have gone by, the problem only seems to be getting worse and worse. The earlier few games gave us a proper answer as to what happened to our favorite assassins, but a few games later, it's like the developers went, we don't really have to do this. Yes, you don't have to, but you should, goddammit. I mean, what the fuck? And yet today in this video, I try to give you a semblance of an answer as to what the afterstory of all the assassins is. Basically what happened to them after the games and the DLCs ended. I'd be excluding Ivor and Cassandra as the stories are apparently still continuing, so including them doesn't make sense at this point. Let's see where the developers take their narrative, because even though Cassandra dies at the end of Odyssey, there are still DLCs and stories coming about her and about the time she was alive. And I expect Ivor to show up in at least some capacity in Assassin's Creed Rift. So let's just see what happens. I already expect to be disappointed, so if by some miracle something good comes out of the next Assassin's Creed games, I'd be really glad and surprised. And if the game continues the same bullshit, well, I've already accepted disappointment, so what more could they do? Now if you bring yourself to enjoy the video, please hit the like button. It helps out tremendously and it's free, so support a brother from the Creed. And also subscribe to the channel for more Assassin's Creed content. And now let's begin. Altair. The afterstory of this man is well known. He lived and died by the Creed. I feel Altair was a prisoner of the Assassin Order because it took away everything good from his life and left him with nothing but burden and heartache. And he was bound to the Creed his entire life. But the one thing I feel happy about or can have some relief in is that at least we know what happened to him later on and how his story ended. And if you've played Revelations, you know it too. Losing his wife Maria and being betrayed by his assassin brothers and Abbas especially, Altair fled Masyaf only to return decades later to regain control of the Assassin Order and the Apple. And then he became the true mentor, deriving knowledge from the cursed thing and actually making it a tool for good instead of a weapon of destruction. And we see him die alone in a dark room as an old man. It really is as heartbreaking as it is inspiring. Now let's talk about Ezio, the most beloved assassin in the franchise. At least that's what the polls showed. He had a journey for the ages and someone said it so well. We see him from the day he was born to the day he passed away. A journey that had so much effect on the lives of people, not just in the Assassin's Creed universe but in reality as well. The kind of good this man has inspired in the hearts of many players is just stuff of legends. And we see his afterstory put oh so brilliantly on the screen in Assassin's Creed Embers. What a short movie it was. And this 20-something minute movie had 100 times more impact and substance than the 125 million disaster that was the 2016 Assassin's Creed movie. Embers takes us 12 years in the future after the events of Revelations transpired, where Ezio is retired to the countryside of Tuscany and is living a peaceful, simple life with his wife Sofia and his children Marcello and Flavia. All is well until Ezio has to encounter one final challenge: protect and train a young woman, Xiao Zhan, to become an assassin. And the process takes so much out of our beloved mentor that it takes his very life. But he dies with his family in his sight. Probably the only thing he wanted to see in his final moments. What a befitting end to a true hero. Now to the afterstory of Connor. Let the frustration begin. Because here starts the ambiguity and quite simply put, the carelessness. All thanks to the creators. But before I start ranting, let me tell you how much is out there. After the events of Assassin's Creed 3, Connor became the mentor of the North American Assassin Brotherhood and also fell in love with a woman from a nearby village, married her, and had 3 children. And his youngest daughter, Yonhiote, showed early signs of possessing the eagle vision, at which point Connor goes against the tradition of not letting women hunt and trains his daughter to be a tracker and a hunter. Is it just me or does it seem like he was laying the foundation to make his daughter an assassin? But after that, it's just... I mean, what the hell? How can they do this and think it's okay? Connor Kenway is one of those characters that has a massive fan base and they just leave his story up in the air. I mean, the only other thing we know is that Abstergo spread propaganda in the present time. The Connor was left alone by his wife who also took 3 children, only for him to die at a young age of 48. And there's a bit of fan fiction about Connor and his son Achilles Diami Kenway, which I won't get into because the canon story just ends there. That's it. No, that's seriously it. But moving on to Edward Kenway, the assassin who was always a pirate at heart. Despite formally and officially becoming an assassin later in his life, man truly belonged to the Jackdaw cruising the oceans. After the events of Black Flag transpired, Edward retired from the dangerous life. He went back home to Britain and got a full pardon from Robert Walpole, who, for those of you who don't know, is also known as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. He was also the cousin of Duncan Walpole, the backstabbing assassin Edward kills at the beginning of Assassin's Creed Black Flag. But why did he get a pardon from him, you might ask? Well, during a mission for the assassins, Edward attacks and captures enters a ship called Charlotte, which belonged to an old enemy, Matthew Haig. But Haig's daddy was a Templar, nepotism, and a friend of Robert Walpole, a mighty powerful man in his time. And as a reward for ridding the world of Duncan Walpole and letting Matthew Haig live, Edward and his crew get the offers of full pardon so they may live as free men, freer than they already were. So Edward, being the cunning man he was, takes the pardon, purchases a massive estate near Queen Anne Square in London, gets married to Tessa Stephenson Oakley, who was also introduced to Edward by Robert Walpole. Talk about a great friend. And he also had another child, Haytham Kenway. Who doesn't know about that? Edward also became the mentor of the British Assassin Order and also kept his research on the issues going. And everything he learned, he recorded in a journal. And to acquire said journal, the Templar Grand Master of the British Order, Reginald Birch, ordered the hidden Edward in 1735. And it's really unfortunate that Edward died when he was 42, but the one relief is at least we know what happened to the guy. That's more than we can say about most other assassins. And now let's move on to Shay Cormac's after story. Rogue had a lot of problems. Bugs, extremely short length, poor marketing, lack of character development, and much more. But Shay was unquestionably the saving grace of the game, and his character pretty much came full circle after the events of Rogue transpired. He moved to far Europe where he had a family and children. He also lived long enough to train his grandson, Cudgel Cormac. Later on in his life, he became the Templar Grandmaster. So power and money were never really an issue for him once he joined the opposite team. And I've seen some comments mentioning the stories about him being killed by Connor's son Achilles. As much as I want to believe it, let me make it clear they're just fan theories, because the actual circumstances around Shay's death and his life after the events of Assassin's Creed Rogue are mostly unknown. Frustration level 99 reached. And now let's talk about Arno. Here we go again with the ambiguity and the carelessness. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Arno, and I guess everybody knows that about now, but he truly deserved a lot more than fading away as a footprint in the ocean of history. After the events of Unity and Dead Kings, we see Arno regain not just his will to live and faith in himself, but also his moniker of being an assassin. And after that, the lights are literally turned off and nothing further is known about the man. What has been deduced though is that Arno surely had at least one child at some point in his life, because he's apparently directly related to Callum Lynch from the Assassin's Creed movie in 2016. But whom did he have children with? Did he ever fall in love again? What was his life after Unity? These vital questions are just left unanswered. You know, I'm truly dumbfounded when I see that fandom pages are more invested in the series and finishing stories than the people who stand to financially benefit from doing just that. What a shame. Now let's move on to Jacob and Evie Frye's story. I'll include them both in the same spot, as the stories were intertwined for most of their lives. Now let's cover what happened between the ending of Syndicate and the beginning of Jack the Ripper. Evie and Jacob carried on their work amongst the Assassin Brotherhood for a considerable amount of time, but eventually they stopped working with, or rather for, Queen Victoria, as it seemed to involve them in things that were more related to the interests of the Queen and the British, and less towards the interests of the assassins. Evie also married Henry Green later on, for which I hate him. And sometime in the future, Evie and her husband Henry moved to India and carried on working with the assassins, but in the Indian Brotherhood instead. And despite Jacob taking charge of the London scene, times were good for a really long span. That was shocking. Jacob even traveled to India to learn from the Brotherhood there. And after the events of Jack the Ripper transpired, things just go blank for a long time, like decades. But Evie eventually trains Jacob's granddaughter Lydia Frye to become a full-blooded assassin. What happened to Henry Green later on is unknown. Evie and Jacob were relocated to the countryside once World War I started, because of the danger to their lives, as Lydia was working with the assassins to stop the Germans and the Templar agents simultaneously. And that is the end of their canonical story. Another tale lost in time. Lost to carelessness rather. As I talk about the after stories, I realize it's just becoming more of an I don't know much video. But what do I really do, because the developers are just so careless with their own characters. People often care about their creation, they really do. But this level of ignorance, oh, it was just unheard of until this point. You know what, let's just go ahead with the video and talk about Bayek's after story, and the one after story that irks me the most, but also gives me hope. Bayek and Aya's story is one for the ages. It's something that legends are formed after, something that gives me goosebumps. Even now that I'm talking about it, I feel chills going down my spine. But those same chills turn into shockwaves when I realize that Bayek's story too is just left up in the air. Now for once, I'll just play Captain America and bring a nauseating bit of optimism into the situation, because I really think, or rather want, the creators to give Bayek a proper sequel. It's high time. It's actually overdue at this point. And I've seen a sentiment where some people feel that since Bayek was a hidden one and operated in complete secrecy, and hence his story being a complete mystery, actually supports the narrative. But I'll have to completely disagree with that, because that would mean the events of Origins, the Hidden Ones, and the Curse of Pharaohs were all redundant, as we witnessed firsthand what happened. We don't matter in the Assassin's Creed timeline, we're just spectators. So Bayek getting a sequel and us witnessing how his story progresses and ends is something we all deserve. Well, fingers crossed. And with that, we reach the end of the video, guys. I want you all to tell me down in the comment section below what you think about the carelessness and the downright mistreatment of characters in the Assassin's Creed franchise. I know many of you are frustrated as well, because I certainly genuinely am, I'll be honest with you. I understand that the RPG era is taking over and everything is changing, but at least tell us what happened to our favorite characters. That's the least you could do. Well, it's not happening, I know that, but I'm not gonna stop trying anytime soon. So if you liked the video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more Assassin's Creed content, subscribe to the channel. That's it for today. Stay safe, stay strong, and stay tuned. It's your boy VZX signing out.